All right, so recording has started. I'll start screen sharing. Okay, so again, we will start or we'll continue with the functions, but although we have explained it and we more than once, maybe 2 or 3 times till now, but it's okay. We can repeat it again and we can discuss it a little bit more. First of all, as we said, I'll not repeat everything because we've done it before. So the function, of course, as we said, the main idea of having the function is to use the code again and again, and especially the most frequently used code. You can convert it to a function, and you can execute it whenever you need when calling the function. Also, it helps modularize the code. If you have a long code, and as I told you before, in the future, maybe you need to write programs with thousands of instructions. Then when you get an error, it's not an easy to debug the error or to find the error or to handle it. So when you convert this program or divide, and this is what you are going to study, I think, in software engineering, when you divide the code into modules, then you can control each modules alone, and when you find an error, you need to focus on that specific module. So in functions, we can convert the large programs into smaller chunks and can be used. Again, we talked about the local variables and the global variables. And we say when you have functions, for example, this function f1, if you declare integer x in this f1, so x is unknown outside the function. Only the function itself can understand what's the meaning of x. If you go to another function or to the main function and you write cout x, you will get error. Why? Because x is not known or is unknown to the function or outside the main function. We call this as local variables. What if I want to declare a variable that is used everywhere? I can declare it outside all the functions at the beginning of after the include. I can declare here integer y. Then y is accessible by all functions. So all variables declared in a function defined are local variables. The parameters, also we discussed the 4 types of functions. Usually in any function like f of integer x, integer y, and integer f, if you return x plus y, for example, then the function takes parameter from when it's called. Okay, not usually, by the way, the function can be called from any other function, not necessary to be only from the main function. All right, but you need to pass arguments to the function, so the function can process them and return the result. Also, we discussed this thoroughly in our previous discussion. I hope you have read through it and you watched the recordings again. The function definition of the functions also has been covered. As we said, all these things has been covered. I want to go to the example so we can practice more. These are the types of the functions. We said I have mainly 4 types. The first type is the function that doesn't take parameters or arguments and doesn't return anything to the when it's called. The second type, the function that takes parameter but doesn't return any values. The third type doesn't take parameters and return values, and the last type, which is most commonly used, is the function that takes parameters and return types, just like the one that we've written a few seconds ago. So this is an example. Write a function that prints the message welcome to C++ when it's called. If you can see this function, give it a name. Okay, here the role of the function or the functionality of the function is just to print a message when it's called. So it doesn't need any parameters to be passed. That's why the parentheses are empty, blank. All right, we don't pass any parameters. And also here we don't have equality. I didn't say x equal this. Why? Because it doesn't return anything, and the type of the function is void. So you need to focus on these things. First, the type is void, all right, because it doesn't return parameters. Second, doesn't take a parameter, empty or blank, all right. And third, there is no return. Okay, it doesn't contain return in its body. So in this case, this function doesn't take parameter, doesn't return parameter, just does something like printing a message. So even when you call it, you just write the name of the function and you don't need to pass any parameters. So this is of type 1, which doesn't take parameter, doesn't return any values to the user. The second example also was discussed. Write a function that receives an integer from the main function. See, the word receives or takes. Sometimes we use the word takes an integer from the main function and prints it to the screen. So if you can see here, we solved it in two different ways. So the first way here, include IOStream using print integer. Here it needs a parameter. This is the first way. I told you there are two ways of writing the functions, either to write it after the main, write the main first, then after the main, or write it before the main. And I encourage you always to use this way, to write it before the main. If you write it after the main, then you have to declare the function or write the prototype of the function. Like here, void print of integer. You don't need to give it give name to the variables, just to tell the compiler that I'm going to declare or to define a function called print int, which will take integer. All right, we'll focus on this one. It's the same thing, only this has been written after the main function. So here, the main idea is to take parameter. When I say take parameters, or takes or receives an integer from the main function and prints it to the screen, that means it will take value and print the value and return no value. Then that's why the type is void. Why? Because it doesn't return any value. It doesn't have return here also. Okay, here we don't have return. All right, and it takes one parameter. When you call it here also, you don't need to write, for example, integer x equal print of 8. Why? Because it doesn't return any parameters of type void. So the type void, when you call it, you just write the name of the function. Okay. Next example that also we discussed before, the function that returns values without taking any parameters. See here, the type is not void. Why? Because it will return. It has return. Okay, and it's written integer, then it has to be of type integer, and the type of the variable that it's going to return should be of the same type of the function itself. So read integer, no parameters, because it doesn't need any parameters to be passed to it. All right, it can directly goes and define x. So the message cout an integer and then read x and return it to the main screen. Here to the main function. Here also, it's very important to know that equality is a must. All right. If you go back here, I focused that you don't or you should not use, for example, integer a equal print or something. You should not use them. Why? Because the type is void and there's no return. So here, if the type is void, that means it doesn't have return value, and also you don't need to to use the equal when you call it. Here, as it will return integer, then I have to declare variable integer to hold the value that the function will return. All right. The final or the last type, write a function that takes two numbers, and we prefer to use integers, and return the sum of the two numbers. Here's the fourth type, which takes parameters, take two numbers, all right, and return the sum. Now the sum of two integers is integer. That's why the type should be integer. When I call it, I have to use this equality, and it should equal to a variable of the same type and pass the parameters to the function. All right. Here we combine the three functions together. We declared the first function, which is to find the sum and read and write. And in the main function, I didn't need to. This is the what we call the modularization. It means I divided the program into modules. This is the first one, and this is the second one, and the third one. Now integer a equal read integer. I will call the read integer to read a variable from the user. Then b also r equals sum of a, b, and print integer of r. Also, it calls this function. So you can use them anytime, and you use the main function just to call the functions from outside. All right, now let's answer these questions. I don't want this. Write a function that determines the maximum of two integers. Let's think about it. Write a function that determines the maximum of two integers. That means I have functions. I'll call it max. And for more clarification, max2 of two integers. That means I need to pass two arguments, integer x and integer y. Here, it will pass. It will return the maximum of the two integers. So, and I write it in a lengthy way. Integer mx. Okay. If x greater than y, then mx equals x. Right? Of course, you can use else if y greater than x, then mx equal y. But if it's not, if x is not larger than y, then for sure y is larger or equal x. So else mx equals y. And of course, at the end, return what? X. This is just in the lengthy way we've written. Now, return X. What's the type? No, return MX. Okay. What's the type of MX? MX is an integer, right? So the type of the function will be integer. Now, this can be written also a bit shorter here. Integer mx2 of integer x integer y. Inside you can write if x greater than y, directly return x, else return y. So both are correct, and you know, even else is not necessary to be written here, but I don't want to make it a bit confusing. That's why I wrote else. So if I pass, for example, 7 and 8, then if x 7 is greater than 8, that's false. That means it will jump here and will return 1. Sorry. Now, if I pass 17 and 8, is 17 greater than 8? True. Then return x. It will not go and execute the return will terminate the function. Okay, we'll stop the execution. So let's write it using the compiler. I'll keep this. Okay, if you want to read them. All right, so I'll start from the mean. Okay, for the contents of the main. So this is the structure of the program. Now here I will define the function. Let's call it first integer of the type max2 of what? Of integer x, integer y. If x is greater than y, okay, then here I'll write it in the lengthy way, then I'll write it in the short way. Okay, here I have to declare also variable integer mx. Okay, then mx equals x, right? Else of course here's maybe you think of writing else if y greater than x. It's okay, but you don't need it. So else mx equals to y. All right, and at the end return mx. Now, if I use the function, for example, here, integer, let's call it a equals max2 of 7 and 8. All right, and then see out max is a and endl end line, and let's execute it. All right, so terminal. All right, build finished successfully. All right, I can run it now. Okay, if you can see here, the maximum is 8. Press any key to continue. This has been added by the compiler. So the maximum is 8. What were the numbers that we passed? 7 and 8. So if I change it, for example, to 17, and I rebuild it, okay, then I run it. Okay, the maximum is 17. All right, so this is the answer of the function. I'll share it with you. Here I'll put a comment writing the code details, or between brackets long. All right, then I will rewrite it in using a shorter way. Okay. So this is the first one, the first answer, and both are correct. But I want you to be familiar, all right, with different ways of writing the code. So here, if you can see, I don't need to declare new variables. All right, so even I have only one instruction here. So why do I need these braces? Okay, so in this case, only if x, then return x. Otherwise, else return y. Okay, that's it. So in shorter way. course. And by the way, even if you remove else, it's still working in the same way, but I'll keep it now. So let's execute it. Then run. Okay, the maximum is 17, as you can see. If we change it to 7 and 8, okay, then run it. The maximum is 8. So also I'll share this with you, just to be aware of different ways of writing the same program or different programs to do the same task. Okay, I'll keep it here. So either is correct. Anyone you want to use, then you are free to use them. Both are correct, and even in the exam, when I give you example, don't think that my answer is different than my classmates' answer, so it might be wrong. No, different answers can do the same task. So write a function that returns true if a given number n is odd, otherwise it must return false. This is what we solved last lecture. Okay, write a function that returns true if a given number is a prime, otherwise it must return false. The other one that we answered here, power, yeah, it's sort of similar to this example. So let's think about it first. Let's discuss it before answering the question. Now, what's the meaning of prime number? Prime number is not odd. Usually you get confused or you get some kind of confusion between the prime number and odd number. Prime number is the number that is divisible only by itself and 1. For example, if I take 2, then to consider it as prime number, I'll divide it by 2 divided by 1. Okay, it is possible. 2 divided by 2 is possible, but only 2, so it's a prime number. Although it's an even, it's a prime number. Let's take 3. 3 divided by 1, possible. 3 divided by 2, not possible. 3 divided by 3, possible. So it's also divisible by 1 and itself only. So it is prime. Let's take 4. Divided by 1, all right? 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 3, no. 4 divided by 4, yes. This is not a prime. Why? Because it is divisible by 2. Okay, so if you can see the number of the or of the times that the number can be divided or is divisible is 2 always to make the number as prime. Let's take another example. 5. 5 divided by 4, no. 5, sorry, by 1, yes. 5 divided by 2, no. 5 divided by 3, no. 5 and 5 divided by 5, true. Then only 2 times, that means this is prime number, right? So if you can see, I can find that the number is prime by dividing it by all the numbers from 1 to the number itself. All right. So here 5 I divided by all the numbers from 1 to 5 and counted how many times it was divisible. It should be divisible only 2 times. If you take 6, for example, 6 divided by 1, yes. 6 divided by 2, yeah. 6 divided by 3, correct. By 4, no. 6 by 5, no. And 6 by 6, yes. So how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not prime. Okay, so how will I solve this? If I say I have a function, let's say Boolean, okay, I'll call it prime of integer x. Then inside this function, I have to create a counter, integer counter equals 0. This counter is increased by 1 whenever the number x is divisible by a specific number. And also, what I'll do here, I have to create a variable, a loop equals from 1, all right, I less than or equal x, okay? Inside this loop, if, how to know that the number is divisible? Okay, it's divisible if we use the mod operation. Like if we say 6, for example, we said 6 divided by 1 is yes. 6 divided by 2, yes. 6 divided by 3, correct. 6 divided by 4, no. 6 divided by 5, no. And 6 divided by 6 is yes. All right. How to find this? To use the mod operation. So if I write say 6 mod 1 equals 0, okay, here 6 mod 2 equals 0, 6 mod 3 equals 0, 6 mod 4 equals 2, 6 mod 5 equals 1, and 6 mod 6 equals 0. So I'll count how many zeros I get from the mod operation. And the number of zeros should not exceed 2 in order to consider the number as prime or not. All right. So here, if x, the number mod I equals 0, then I'll increase the counter CNT plus plus. All right, that's it. Now, if CNT greater than 2, okay, that means what? The number is not returned false. Okay, else return true. Okay, so if the count or the number of the times that the number itself that we sent accepted or gave 0 when we took the mod with all the numbers between 1 and itself. If the number is greater than 2, then it is not it's prime, not prime. Now we have another issue here. What if I have sent 1 or 0? Okay, of course here you have to put condition. We'll do it later, but basically this is the answer. So let's write the code and see. Oh, we lost all the explanations, don't worry. So I've got a message. Yeah, نسيبه wrote الأعداد الأولية. Okay, very well. So here I will write the function, as we said. First of all, I will, or let's delete everything. Okay, the name of the function will be prime. Okay, but it will return either true or false. That's why I select the type Boolean. All right, prime of integer x. Okay, very well. So here, as I told you, I'll declare counter equals 0 to count the number of the number of the times in which the variable or the value of x is divisible by any number. So here also for integer I equals from 1, okay, I less than or equal right, and here also we need to add the update I plus plus if x mod 2 equals 0, then you know what, I just print the number, print sorry, cout. It's not necessary, but just to show you that the number that the value of x is or x is divisible on, cout I and dl, and I'll increase the counter by 1, cnt plus plus. Okay. Now, so now we did not return anything, still in the for loop. If you can see, this is the parentheses of the if statement. This is the braces of the of the for loop. Then here at the end, if c and t greater than 2, okay, that means return false. Okay. Else return true. Okay. Are we done? Almost. We need to use it in the main function. So cout, I'll use directly a cout prime of 7. Let's test 7 and see if it's prime or not. Okay, everybody knows that 7 is prime, so I'm expecting that it should give me true. All right, so terminal run. All right, so 1 second, I'll just add endl. Right, and why did it print if x mod 2 equals 0? Let's see out I. All right, so let's okay. All right, so we got 1 here. You can see, let me enlarge it. 1 means true. All right. Now, what if we passed another number, let's say 4? Since we took the example about 6, so here, terminal, okay. All right, so if you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's I, so it's 0 here. All right, I shouldn't write this. Okay, 0 means false. I'll just remove this print from. Okay, just the counter and then we will try to solve this issue. So terminal, right, run. Okay, so 0 means it's not a prime number. Okay, now of course we took a few small numbers. Let's try 1, 6, 2, 3, 4. All right, and see if this number is a prime or not. Of course, it's not prime because it's divisible by 2. So let's change it to 5. 5 also is not prime. 7. Okay, and we will see if it's prime or not. So yeah, it's a prime. Okay, so this number also is a prime number. Okay, so I'll share this with you now. Okay, let's see the other questions that we didn't answer till now. This was also answered. We explained the default values. If the user does not pass the value, the function, for example, in this case, the function will take the default value. When define a function, this example, I just remind you about it. Okay. For example, this print info, string name, string country. Here, if you notice that I put equals to Oman, the default value. So if you don't pass, okay, the values, I mean the value of the country, okay, it will consider the default. So here, if when we call it string n equal this and print info, okay, print info, of course, should take this one will return errors, by the way. Okay, I will change it. Let's take another example here. Okay, default value. Let's define a function. Okay. Info. Okay. String name. String account. Another example. All right. So here, if we call the string is not RT, all right, not string, make it double. Now, if you can see here, I'll print the information. Okay, see out. Your name is name, and you have OMR amount. Account should be amount. All right, that's it. Info, I don't know why it's considered integer info, string name double. Okay. Now here, if I want to call it, okay, info of, I have to send the name. Okay, let's say Ali, then comma 200. Okay, why I have this error? Disable error debugging. Integer. Void. Sorry. I was talking with you about this important, but I forgot it myself. So since it won't return any value, then it should be of type void. So void info of string name double account. That means I'll send the name, I'll send the account, it will print it. All right. Now, if you can see here, let's just build it. Okay. Then we'll run it. I'm still working the old one. Yes, here is not semicolon. Should be this. And the name should be also the same. And we don't have parentheses. I'm sorry, I just mixed up with Python. So your name is you have, okay, and then ENDL. Why account is double account expected semicolon before? Oh, all right. So let's debug it again, compile again. All right. Now I can run it. Okay. See what I got? Your name is Ali. You have OMR 200. Okay. Because I passed the two arguments. Now, if I don't pass the second argument and compiled, I'll get errors, right? So when I build it, see, build finish with errors. Let's see what the errors are. Okay. Yeah. See, here the error is your name is and no, this is the old one. This is the error. Too few arguments to functions. The meaning of too few arguments mean you didn't pass the necessary or the required arguments. You passed one and it's required two. See here? Okay, so in this case, how to solve this? I can solve it by considering the default value. The default value, if I put here equal 0. Why? Because the default value of any account is 0. Okay, then when I execute it now, it will check, or when it sees that I didn't pass any, or the main function didn't pass any value for the account, it will consider the default value, which is 0. Let's run it. Let's see if I have any errors. Okay. All right, so see now the error has been removed, but at the same time, it will consider the default value of the amount is 0. So run. Okay. If you can see here, your name is Ali, you have OMR 0. So the default value always solves the problems. Now, if I, for example, which is not recommended at all, change this to be not Ali. No, it will be the same. But if I don't send the arguments, if I call it like a blank, it will take the default value for both variables. All right. When you execute it, you will get your name is Ahmed and you have 0, etc. Okay. So I will just, I don't want this. Yes. I will share this with you to explain the idea of the default values. And again, the default values is used when you don't pass arguments and when you know exactly the default value that it should be. Okay. Next lecture, we'll take the function overloading. The function overloading, it is used when you have the same function but with different types and with different number of arguments. All right. I think that's it for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll stop recording now.